All right, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this time that you've given to us. God, we thank you for Neil, his willingness to teach. I ask that you help him to get back to full health and get to better. We thank you for his willingness to come here even when he's not feeling the best to teach. Just bless him and his family and his work, and bless all of us as students. It's in your son Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you for that prayer. Sorry if I sound a little whiny. My philosophy for about 25 years has been when you're sick, you don't feel good, is run it out. So I try to sweat out whatever I got going on. And so far, that's not too bad of a philosophy.
I agree with that. I agree with that philosophy 100%, except if you have to be around people, I think you should say, I'm going to bow out.
He runs past those people.
Well, I'm to Michael's point, I'm not going to be touching hands any today. I had some visits I want to make there, and I don't know if I'm contagious or not. So we'll figure it out. Speaking of visiting, I wanted to say a little bit more about that before we close, because I know this shows up on your final. I call this the problem of visiting. It's very brief, and then we're going to completely change our stream of thought. We talked a bit about this earlier in this quarter, I think, that there's a lot of opinions on the subject of visiting. There's extremes like there is in any subject. One extreme is that it's the preacher's job as a Christian to do some visiting, even though he's an evangelist. And the other extreme is the preacher is not paid to make visits. And we've talked about why that's not the wisest. But in wisdom, if a man is married, it's wise for him to take his wife and his children with him visiting. Just like we talked about hospital visits, home visits the same way. The more you visit as a preacher, the more you know the congregation. You can't visit to the neglect of your study. And when you visit, your preaching and teaching is much more well received. So in this, we need to follow the example of Jesus. You know, when you think about his miracles and his ministry in the villages, whatever you want to call that, there's a lot of visiting. He goes into homes. You know, when he settles in Capernaum, and you think about how he visits, and when he goes to different parts of Palestine, whenever he's received in homes, that's what he's doing. He's visiting. We know we can't substitute for the entire church, but the church can't substitute for us either. So 5 types of visits I want to deal with here. Number 1, we need to make visits to the sick and shut in. Number 2, we need to visit new members. Number 3, we need to visit members that are spiritually weak. We need to visit, number 4, the elderly. And I distinguish that from the shut-in because the shut-in may be elderly, and often they are. But, we'll talk about the elderly before we close this class. But they're going to be some of your greatest supporters and encouragers. And they have reached an age in life where more and more of their peers and probably their spouses and so forth are dying. And so there's a greater sense of isolation and loneliness. And so we can help them in that. Number 5 are prospects for baptism and non-Christian visitors. When you move to a new community, visit the members as quickly as you reasonably can. If you're married, set up a regular visiting plan for you and your wife together. Maybe it's a day in the week. And keep records. Why? Why keep records of your visits?
Help you remember who you've gone to see.
Okay. All right. That's one thing is, and I don't know about you guys, but aren't there people that you like to visit more than others? Yeah. And maybe subconsciously you find yourself visiting those people more than you do others. And so if I can see that written down, it gives me balance so that I'm trying to get to see as many people as possible.
One of the other reasons you would do it is, and it's unfortunate, but when somebody says, what do you do all day?
Yeah. Yeah. The way I put that, Michael, is that it allows you to avoid criticism. And it's and not defensively or sensitively, but it allows you to say, well, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. For that reason, I write this down. We never want to come across like we're just thin-skinned, but then we can show them and objectively, here it is. That's you're not saying it, but what you're saying is it's an illegitimate criticism. It also, I don't know if you guys ever do this, but if you can, just like in counseling or in a Bible study, especially when you're new to a work, write down information that you gleaned from that visit. If you are writing it down, keeping information, birthday, anniversary of death, or anniversary of the couple, whatever it is, meaningful moments or backgrounds, that may help you to understand why Sister Smith is so curmudgeon-y. It's because she's suffered a lot, and you have that chronicle to help you understand the person better. So I just I felt like we didn't quite get that finished. Any thoughts or comments you guys had on visiting before we leave that for something else?
When you get into these small congregations, it's really important to make those documentations, because I have begun to find out in my visiting here how many of these folks are related.
Oh, yeah.
It's all just one big extended family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was surprised in a semi-urban congregation like we are, how many people are related to each other. It may not always be the case, but that is helpful to know what the connection is. Okay, good thought. Anything else on visiting in general? Questions, comments, or thoughts?
Well, I believe that in visiting, you also establish the connectivity to the congregation, not only in accountability, but you get to see them in their natural element. It's different to visit. When you visit somebody, you get to see them naturally act, and versus when they come to service, how their demeanor changes. So you're able to get a little personal, it's very vital, especially to every congregation. That connectivity for a preacher is important, and even for the leadership.
That's right. Well, take it to the next level. Have them into your home. Man, you can change the nature of a relationship by having somebody in your home for a meal. Because we don't mean to be, but we're more formal, we're more reserved. Maybe we're moving with a purpose at the church services, and even in a smaller congregation where you're going to be able to visit more with more people, it does change the vector on that when you have them into your house. Or when you go into theirs. I mean, the same thing happens if they have you in. But even if there's no meal present, I mean, I think the meal fellowship is a big part of the New Testament church's intimacy and their growth. But just getting outside of the services changes.
Jake, that's tough for you and me, isn't it, brother? Because they know we're single. They're like, I don't know if I want to go over and eat that cooking.
Well, yeah. And
you're right.
That day or something, or whatever. So.
I know they've already told me they're a little suspect about coming over for dinner at my house. I made it abundantly clear. So
yeah. Well,
I'll actually get Taylor to come down and cook for me. That's what I ought to do.
Yeah.
There you go.
I wanted to add that that last point you made is something that I consciously do now. It was the point about, no matter what situation or conversation you have, think about what you can glean from it. I consciously do that because as an introvert, I don't always enjoy long conversations with people, especially if I don't find them productive or beneficial. Maybe they're beneficial for them, who knows? But, searching for, okay, what can I take from this conversation to make me better, to make them better, to make my family better, to make life better, to make my Bible reading better, is so huge, because otherwise I just say, well, that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, if you can take this assurance, it never is. I'm trying to think of an exception. I won't tell you her name. I had a lady that just about any time she talked to me, I mean, this is over the course of a long ministry, it was almost always critical, and I didn't enjoy being in conversation. But with the benefit of hindsight, I actually did. Even if the benefit is learning how to deal with difficult people, and over time, she had a husband who was forced into retirement early, and I took him to eat every once in a while, and that softened her heart. It took me years to figure out the way in with her. But there were many a conversation, Jake, where I'm right there with you, where I'm going, what do I take away from this? And that's to me, this is maybe a variation. It's not teaching and preaching, but I think about Isaiah 55:10-11, as the rain comes from heaven and the dew, and it scatters seed for the sower and bread for the eater. So will my word be that goes forth from my mouth. It will not return unto me void. As we live the word and we're participating in God's a process in ministry, I think that principle holds up too. Good thought. Anything else? Yep. Go ahead, Mike. And why you got more fan on? Okay. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah. I believe it's on the other side that we're ministering grace. Sometimes we are learning always, but never forget what you learn about yourself. Ministering grace to the hearer. The conversation should be uplifting, but it's not so much what you can get always from them, is what you can do for others.
That's right.
And that's a part of our ministry that sometimes we lack. People don't want to know how much you know; they want to know how much you care. Yeah. Then they'll be interested in what you know, and then you can be applicable for it. And so I just, especially from the older, you get to glean some things from the older generation that you can't glean from the younger generation. Yeah. So I always, when I go visit, I'm always in the mood of learning about what I can do for me, like we're saying, but also learning how to minister to them and be more effective when I'm in the pulpit to come and communicate to them. So irony, I'm from Pennsylvania, I'm from Philadelphia, but that doesn't mean I don't know nothing about farmland. But I preach in Georgia, but I better know a little bit about agriculture. Yeah. I better know something about photosynthesis. You need to know so you can be in there to help them, and then they can also communicate back to you and make sure that your preaching and teaching is coming across with application.
Yeah, good insight. I mean, I appreciate the honest reflection on how hard it can be sometimes, but that's a good point. And sometimes I miss that it's not, just what I'm getting, but just the mere, even when we feel like we're doing it awkwardly or not doing it well, that people appreciate the investment. That's a good point. All right.
I got a quick question.
Okay.
Do you ever, I don't have that many members. I have nobody in the hospital. I have one in a nursing home and one shut in. That's just not a lot of visiting. Do you ever just go to the hospital and visit?
Absolutely. All right. So I was, my first work, there were between 50 and 60 folks. But by the way, with that size congregation, that's where I started writing, trying to find different ways to contribute locally and beyond, to think kingdom contributions. But that was the place I had the luxury of time more, or the luxury of the size of the ministry, to be able to go and make visits at the nursing home, Hill Nursing Home in York, or the hospitals, because and Wendell Winkler, Dan's dad, was always big on that. As you know, that's a way to get to know the town, and creating opportunities. You're looking evangelistically, because it's not just the person who may or may not be in their right mind, but it's their daughter or son who visit every day and they see you there. So that was something I practiced even more when I had that greater flexibility of a smaller work. Yeah, good point. All right, let's talk about preacher and little things. Preaching and little things. This is just kind of a one-off. It does deal with our section on the preacher and people. Number one, don't forget the little things. So if you were to try to think about what falls under the umbrella of the little things that make up our ministries, what kind of items would you populate that list with? What are the little things that we might do that can make a big difference?
Oh, I got if you got kids there and you know that the ball games are important, go to a ball game.
Okay. Yeah, going to a ball game. It's a little thing, depending on where it is. It's an hour tops of a commitment, and that's to me that's easy pickings, and that's a great way to become part of your community. But all you've done is you've gone out to a ball field and watched a ball game, and especially go up to that little kid afterwards and tell them how good a job they did. You're connecting with the youth. All right. What else? Yeah, go ahead, Jeremiah.
I would say just introducing yourself to a visitor, someone who just kind of sits down, doesn't really talk to anyone. You just kind of go out of your way, just say, "Hey, my name is so and so."
Yeah. So, those folks who come are going to have an assessment of the congregation. And I would say to tag onto that, Jeremiah, that another little thing, an addendum to that is to try to create an environment where you encourage others to do the same thing. Because if you can duplicate those efforts besides yourself, it does that. Sammy?
I might be judged for this on that, but sometimes writing the bulletin article, it's like I've got 1,000 other things to do and not taking time to really focus on doing that side of it.
Yeah, not copying and pasting something else, but writing something personal from yourself.
A lot of people really enjoy reading those. So
yeah, oh, absolutely. Now, before we leave that, the bulletin article is a great way, and I don't know that we've really emphasized that here, where you can recognize the good that people do in some way. What if you made a little column in the bulletin? I caught you, or Romans 12:15. Sister Sally Jones was given a civic award was the employee of the month, at Burger King, or whatever, just something small that nothing was said. You ran into that information. Bubba Smith won the 7th grade spelling bee. I mean, they're like, who even knew that? And yet public. We said this earlier, didn't we? Public encouragement, private criticism. This is just one of those extra special. Didn't see it coming. But again, it goes to that, Samuel. You got 1,000 things going on, but you took the time for that, Mike.
I think about spending time with brothers that are not in leadership, developing relationships with the brethren. You have to spend time with the leadership, do some things, but spend time with the brethren. Don't be so separate from the congregation. Be a part of the congregation. We get offended when people say, well, we're glad that you came to work with us. Well, I'm a part of you. And if I don't ever get that established with you, that's I think it's a small thing, but it's important in building your ministry.
And not just for Jake and Michael, but for all of us. I have done this on more than one occasion, is to find a single young man in the congregation, because oftentimes they may be a higher casualty rate spiritually. They may have a harder time connecting with the local work, and ask them if it's once a month, if you could do it once a week, say, I've got a visit to make, or somebody that came to visit our services, whatever it is, to say, can you go with me? Now, they're not necessarily going to be in the pipeline of leadership in the short term, at least not in formal leadership. But think of the investment that makes in them and their faithfulness. And they'll say, not that it is true, but they may think, wow, who am I that the preacher would take me with him? And yet who knows what that may breed in them spiritually. But yeah, not just visible leaders, but investing in individuals. So you can see this list could be as elastic as the various things that you've said. Let me add to what you've said. Don't forget the little things. We've kind of touched on this, like encouragement. How about cards and notes? We're in the electronic age, and it is so easy just to slap a text out there. But what happens when you just kind of jot a note? We have mailboxes here at the church building. I don't know if you guys do that or not. We've done that the last 3 places that we've been. Just go slip a card in there. Folks who are leaving on vacation, saying we're going to miss you while you're gone. You need me to come by and check on anything while you're gone? Probably won't, but it means a lot to them that you asked. Recognizing kids who do well in school and sports activities. Send letters to shut-ins. have you ever just sent a note to encourage or uplift members? They're not in crisis. They haven't lost anybody. They're not struggling spiritually. They're the silent soldiers who you can count on. But just to say, I just want you to know how much I appreciate your faithfulness and your steadiness. It means a lot to me. You don't know how many people are seeing and benefiting from your example. How long does that take? How much does that cost? I don't know what stamps are these days, $1.50 or something, but whatever it is, send it out. And it makes a big difference. And people I'll tell you, people will remember that a long time.
$73 for a book of 100 stamps.
Yeah.
And that's a great way. That's a great way to get your wife involved in what you're doing. If you have her do the card ministry, it's good for a congregation to do their own card ministry, but it's more personal when the wife of the preacher does it, because they accept it from the preacher. Because we can't see everything, and the wife will say, Sister so and so is going through this. We want to send her a card of encouragement, and then you'll get phone calls. But that's a very pivotal point for the church.
That's right. She's the perfect silent partner. That's good. All right. Go ahead, Michael.
Somebody here started a little program. They call it the Stay in the Fight program, which is kind of what you were talking about. Every once in a while, we'll just pick somebody and send a card and say, your faithfulness is an encouragement to all of us. So he calls it the Stay in the Fight program. Every once in a while, I'll get a card on my desk. Stay in the fight.
I love that. That's good. That's good. Number 2, write letters to boys and young men when they excel in church services. Number 3, write letters or otherwise communicate to former congregations when you hear about deaths. Now, how many of you are in your first work? Okay. So, that's file that away for the future. If you don't burn this notebook when you're done, there'll come a time when you can look back and say, oh yeah. And it means a lot. And there'll be occasions actually where you'll even be asked to go back and preach the funeral for somebody. Number 4, write letters, or do you guys use social media? I've been off for 5 years. I used to be heavily into that. I don't, not a judgment. It's not a right, wrong thing. It's been great for my mental health. Every day I'm more grateful I'm not on it. But through social media, Facebook inbox messages, or whatever other means, you can do this electronically is my point. Email, if you still use that outside of school, write a note to a fellow preacher when they wrote a good article, or if you go to their YouTube page and they preach a good sermon. They're not expecting that, and they don't do it for that reason. But man, if somebody out of the blue told you what a great sermon that was, how would you feel? Or something specific that you point out about that. That's a little thing, and yet think of the difference it makes. Number 5, don't forget birthdays. You guys have a church directory app or something? Or wherever, if you have a paper directory. We have instant church directory because it's just so easy to navigate. And out of that, it has the daily birthdays and anniversaries. In the course of your morning, as my wife reminds me, not too early, because people don't get up as early as I do. Go to that and just when you see that, that's a deal where you can send them a text. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, and a little personal note with that. It's huge. It take you 15 seconds, and yet it's a big deal. Number 6, don't forget to write thank you notes to members who do little things for you. I'm indebted to my wife here. She has a whole lot more etiquette than I do. I was not necessarily raised as a boy to do these kinds of things, but she is as good as I've seen at don't let any time go by. Say thank you, write a card. She'll prompt me to do that. But people appreciate your appreciation for their act of appreciation. It just, it's a little thing, and yet it just shows you to be thoughtful. Number 7, go by and pick up an elderly man and pal around, eat with him, adopt a guy that you can do that for, or maybe more than one. number, I think it's 8. If you have number 1 is remember little things. If not, then this will be number 7. Have young men conduct the service. You guys ever done a Timothy class? Do you know what I mean? You may call it something different. It's a training class.
Yeah. I mean, when you have the young men actually conduct the worship service, and you're training them and you're mentoring them, and they're able. That's a staple in helping the church to grow and appreciate the young men and keeping them focused. It's a great thing.
Now, do y'all y'all take homiletics, don't you? Sermon prep and delivery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that's what I've often used in my young men's training class, because I mean, you can train them in other aspects, but I gave greater emphasis to how to write a lesson, how to prepare a lesson. So we talked about gestures, tone, voice inflection, a lead statement, all that's involved, your intro, body, and conclusion, all of that. And then, you work with them through that time. And it's been pretty cool. I'm old enough of a guy that some of the kids that were in some of my early years are serving as elders and have been serving as preachers for years. And I have no idea what part that played, but it was an investment in those guys. They were in those classes. And so the little things aren't necessarily as little. We think about leavening influence. 1 Corinthians 5:7, it's bad. But in Matthew 13, it's good. So just those little seeds that we plant. Number 9, encourage the church in daily Bible reading. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Not as a checklist, but as a culture you're trying to create of people raising their Bible literacy. Number 10, encourage other people. And I put that as an individual point, because make that an active objective in your local work, to always be looking for ways to be positive and encouraging, because we're going to have a little section on discouragement. It won't be today, it'll probably be next week, and I'm going to be talking about the discouragements we feel in preaching, but on your pew, on every pew, there are people who are constantly wrestling with feelings of discouragement. And there's a lot of different ways that comes in their life. And so if you can make it an active and intentional activity on your part to encourage people and find creative ways to do that, it's a little thing, but it yields great benefits. I could probably say more about that. That's all I got on that. Any thoughts or comments before we?
Yeah, I had a quick comment. When we were young, I don't know if you remember this, but I don't know if they still have it. The Ron Willingham Leadership Training Course. Do you remember that?
I've heard of it. I wasn't actually in that program.
We used that at Westside there in Salem.
Is that the We Care? That's not We Care. That's different.
Yeah, it's different.
Okay.
But and yeah, it's called the Ron Willingham Leadership Training Course, and that was that I didn't have an option of whether I was in that class or not, being as my dad was the preacher there. But we had a lot of the young men took it, and it's a really, really good program.
So what does it consist of?
Everything. It talks about it talks to them about the role of an elder for later in their life. It talks to them about song leading. It talks about leading prayer. It talks about reading scripture. It talks about delivering a lesson. And it went through all of that.
Okay. I don't, and the thing is, I don't think that there's anything that has come along to replace that I know about anyway. So
that may be a work.
Huh?
That may be something I can.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
It's little, and it's always worth mentioning. Mm-hmm. Finding little small times to your schedule to spend time with the wife. Just you have to recharge your battery. She got to recharge her battery. Hey, I know. Usually you have a lunch date, but come, let's go have a lunch date. Let's just reassess ourselves, and make sure. Sometimes you got to throw that little wrench in to change up your day, just not on the average day. Hey, this is my day off, and because your day off seems to be more work around the house and everything else, and you're not really spending a little. You need a little bit of rebooting time for you and her, and then maybe discuss about the ministry she's involved in. So it may not be a big, it's a little thing, but being able to support her ministry is important while she supports yours.
And she's a member of your congregation. Don't forget that. That's good.
I would love to do that, Mike. I would love to do that. That'd be great. Thanks for rubbing it in, brother.
We're walking a tightrope on this.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Well, you just remember, you remember I tried to help you, so don't you say nothing. And Sam is my witness. Okay.
All right. Well, okay.
I don't remember that, because if you'd have tried to help me, I would have definitely taken help. I've been told before I need all the help I can get.
Don't we all?
Look, we're on recording. I can't expose everything that happened at PTP, but you know I support you, sir. All right, thank you. I don't want to hear all that.
All right. While y'all ponder and contemplate that, let me ask you a question. Have we dealt with ending of work yet? I know we dealt with beginning of work. I don't remember us talking about it. Okay.
We didn't talk about it. It's in the notes.
It's in the notes?
Yeah, I seen a concept where it's talking about ending the work. You had information on that.
Okay, I just don't remember. I don't remember dealing with that, and I don't want to encourage you guys to think about ending your work, but I think there are some practical. There's some right and wrong ways to do that.
We did sort of talk. We talked about entertaining how to go about if somebody calls you and asks, and the prayer and the thoughtfulness that needs to go into that. So we sort of talked about
that was like interviews. Yeah, we haven't talked about ending.
How do you smoothly to the
okay? No, I don't recall talking about that.
Yeah, I don't think we
didn't talk about it. It's in the notes.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that's there. And I want to mention this because in my experience, that's a harder thing to do than beginning of work, especially if you're doing the work right. It's I have had to leave 3 works, and Samuel, I don't remember. You probably came a little later than this, but to Colorado. But in 2012, our oldest son graduated high school and went to Freed-Hardeman. And while he was there, he's had asthma since he was 15 months old, and the longer he was there, the more critically ill he got, and he was in the hospital all the time. So it just so happened that the congregation within close driving distance of Freed reached out to me and gauged my interest in coming, and I went down to that congregation, and I initially accepted their work, which meant I had to go and talk to the elders at Bear Valley. I'd been there 6 years at the time, 6.5, and said, we've accepted this work. They announced it publicly. Gary went to the ER in the middle of that week, and the doctor said, the worst thing you could do is move him down to that area. It's one of the worst in the country for asthma, at least in the condition he was in. So I had to go back to 2 elderships and say, psych, I'm not. Of course, didn't say it that way. It was I ate my full of humble pie. I made 3 congregations mad at me in one weekend. I was supposed to hold a gospel meeting at Panama Street in Montgomery, where Frank Chesser is. And I had the elders, when I came back to Bear Valley and said, I'm not leaving. That was a risky conversation. Oh man, calling the other congregation that I accepted their work, and talking to their elders and saying, here are the circumstances, for this reason I can't come. That was probably the worst. And then Frank if you know Frank Chesser, he is a perfect gentleman. He is a wonderful man. But he also plans gospel meetings 15 years in advance. So I don't have like big gaps in my, like 12, 15 years in the future, like maybe if you guys do. But anyway, that's been in the pipeline for a long time. And for me to say literally at the 11th hour, I can't come. So I don't know that I have, my point in all that is, I don't know if I have the legitimacy to talk to you about the ending of work, because but I learned a lot from that. And I do think that it's important. We're kingdom guys. We want the church to be stronger. We want to leave a church stronger than we got there. We want it to succeed. The church where we have worked, when we go somewhere else. We want to do it right. We always want to do the very best we can. So I think this is helpful for you because it may not be today, may not be this year. It may be 5 years from now. But statistically speaking, all you guys are going to be in this boat at some point. Okay. How do you do that? A preacher friend of mine had a dad who was also a preacher who bragged, "I always burn my bridges." That is not the philosophy or the approach. And I don't know what that says about him. But unless you're always leaving the congregation in controversy and strife, it is going to be heartbreaking to leave one work for another work. This is a reason why, for one thing, that you don't choose to be close to just one or two families to the exclusion of others. You want your work to have impacted as many families as possible. You want to leave that work on a high note. You want to leave them wanting more from you and your work that you're doing and your family if you're married and have kids. So what I want to do is to give you some what I think are important thoughts for leaving a work, okay? Just a few points. Number one, acquaint the church with the new man. I don't know why anybody would have a hard time with this. I think that we ought to be his biggest cheerleader. I mean, assuming that he is a sound and able man, help promote him to the church. You know, it's going to be his job to build a successful local work. And you want to make his first steps easier. I mean, to me, that's the golden rule. Isn't that Luke 6:31, Matthew 7:12? That we want to treat him the way we would want to be treated if we were coming into that work. And think about this, the better he does, the more impactful that makes your ministry. You want him to be able, maybe you're a planter, maybe he comes in and waters. God causes the growth, but you can be a partner with God in that. So acquaint the church with the new man. Number two, make a pledge to the old work to make the move and transition as smooth as possible. Even if you're leaving under less than ideal circumstances, be a force for unity. Have you guys ever noticed, especially if it was not a decision that you as the preacher made yourself, have you ever seen a preacher less than gracefully leave a work?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen a preacher not leave the city and start a new congregation in town? I'm not to assess every situation. So you may know a situation. Let me speak in the rule rather than the exception. The bride of Christ, the body of Christ, is precious to the groom. And you don't ever want to be a part of or have that stain on you and your work of being a part of a division. Maybe the question is, what if there's doctrinal issues? You triple, quadruple check to make sure that it is doctrine and not hurt feelings and personality or judgment calls and things that you can definitively say. Expanding role of women, introduction of instrumental music in the worship, fellowshipping with denominations, something that you can tangibly say, this is apostasy. My experience is that the overwhelming majority is because of a power struggle and a conflict between brethren that they could not get resolved. And as a preacher, you never want to be a part of that. You want to you do all you can to keep those folks together. Even if you think there's a directional problem with the leadership, that's going to be on them. You do your very best to leave that work as intact as you can. Does that make sense? Y'all seen what I'm talking about, haven't you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And that segues into how you preach in your time with the congregation. If you are building a congregation to make you the staple of their life, then you have a problem. Because when you leave a work, the onus now becomes that they have no dependency on Christ. It's dependent on you. And that's, unfortunately, that's more than sometimes what happens in the work. That's why a lot of preachers that do leave bitter or things like that, they they fuel hatred towards others because they're disgruntled, and so
They color the thinking of other members.
It's my way or the highway. Well,
Yeah.
you done messed that concept up. You done
That's
messed
right.
that concept up.
That's right. It's not our
And so,
church.
no, it's churches, and it's Christ's church, and then the leadership also has to play a part in. And I'm talking about when you don't have elders. The
Mhm.
brethren cannot be demoralized through your preaching and teaching that they're unworthy or they're unfit, less it's doctrinal.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and that's
you got to be very careful how you handle that.
right.
Yeah, you got to be very careful how you handle that.
That's right. You need to be enabling and building others, empowering them. Now, listen, when you leave at work, if you've been effective, you cannot control the preacheritis that people may feel that you have not done anything to foster or engender, but it exists to a certain degree because of the fallibility of people. But you don't want to be one who has contributed that, created this dependency. Don't we want the works where we spent hard years of our life and we invested and toiled? Don't we want those churches to thrive without us, beyond us? Because this is a part of our life and ministry that we put into that. And we want them to continue to move forward. And so how we leave plays an integral part in that. All right. Any other thoughts about that before we go further?
Quick question.
Yeah.
How long do you entertain former members calling you after you've left the work? So essentially, you see, you've moved on. You started to work and you're going to that work, but it feels like you still got two works because everybody's still innately, as you built that trust, you understand that vulnerability. And I'm not saying that they're calling because they're complaining. They're just so, they're in love with the position, and that's just part of the fact. How long do you allow that to go?
You left them in the relationship was good. But I've heard it. I don't know who came up with this, but that's kind of I don't know how the term was, but it was kind of like practical polygamy. You can't be married to two churches. And maybe this is a poor analogy, but when you move from one church to the other, it's like a divorce in this regard, that if you leave on your terms, they feel jilted to some degree at their best because you've chosen someone else over them. But you go and you're married to a new congregation in that sense, that you're investing day after day into new relationships. You can't do that and continue to hang on to that older relationship in the same way. You can maintain friendships for years to come, but your primary responsibility is going to be to the new work. So I would say, Mike, I don't know about a deliberate plan of action, but I think it kind of begins immediately. You have that little lame duck period when you're still the preacher here, but you know that you're moving there. Any works or programs or things that are going on. Unfortunately, there's a expiration date on those things, and like in the presidency, a lame duck period is not the most productive time, but that's going to be that time when you're starting to transition. Assure your love for them, but I'd say that begins pretty immediately, at least the nature of it. You can't field those 2-hour phone calls, or there's no way you're going to be able to integrate into your new work. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Number 3, encourage and exhort the members in several areas. Let me give you several of these. Number 1, to give the new preacher a warm welcome. Man, you are in charge of the welcome committee, in my opinion. Even further, to write the new preacher a letter. Let's imagine that you've been hired at Congregation X in El Paso, Texas, and Congregation X sends you 35, 40 letters saying, we're excited for your coming. What would that do for you? How would you enter into that work? So again, the golden rule, let's do that for the next guy coming in. Number 3, encourage them to extend hospitality to the new preacher. Have he and his family into their homes. invite them to group functions, and also let them know not to be offended if the preacher occasionally says no. It may be that he's trying to negotiate getting his family adjusted, but not to give up, to continue to invite. Encourage the congregation, fourth, to tell the preacher their names clearly and repeatedly, and to give him and his wife and his family time to learn and remember those names. The last two congregations where I have preached have had 300 plus folks, and I remember in one of those works, I had a brother come up to me after our house hunting trip. So we'd only been there. That was the second time. And he said, "Do you remember my name?" And he was offended when I didn't remember his name. And the whole mantra is there's just two of us, and there's all of you. Give us some time, but you need to help the congregation. You have a part in that. Say, give them some time. Number 5, encourage the congregation to be cooperative. He's going to have ideas. They're going to be different from your ideas. Number 6, to include the preacher's children with the young people. That can fall through the cracks. They're maybe these kids have all grown up in that area, but your kids or that preacher's kids, if you're leaving that congregation, are coming in and having to start all over again, and that's hard. I'm a preacher's kid, and Michael, this may be your experience. Although I think your dad may have stayed longer than mine did at places, but that's hard to. And Samuel, I think you may have had that experience. Although your dad was in South Dakota for a long time, it's hard. It's hard to start over again.
Very hard.
Yeah, and it's if you have the church there welcoming you in, that makes all the difference. Encourage them not to be critical. Number 8, encourage them not to constantly refer to the former preacher. Brother Settle used to do this. Brother Walker was always fond of saying, Brother Taylor, he was the best at X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, what good does that do? But they don't mean harm to the new preacher. They miss you. And you want them to be mindful about that, because if you were walking into that situation, you wouldn't want that. Number 8, 9, I don't know. I have it lettered in my notes. Remind them to encourage him by complimenting his lessons. And then finally, encourage them to not compare. In the process of time, they'll find, and this shouldn't hurt our ego at all, that the new preacher may not excel in some areas like we did, but probably excels in some areas we didn't. I've been here now almost 6 years, and the man that followed me, I'd been there 13 years. There are areas they're finding out that he just far exceeds what I was able to do in some areas. And that's wonderful. The kingdom's all the better for that. Mike up top and Michael after that.
I always say that every congregation is not for every preacher, and every preacher is not for every congregation. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things you need to include in your list is telling the new preacher or explaining to him the strength of the congregation. So, certain congregations have a certain ministry in that area because of the community, and you want to keep encouraging the church and the new preacher as they come in to continue that work, because that may be the main source of what may drive evangelism, benevolence, everything else. And if you establish that and it's been going, you want to keep that going. You don't want other people to fall off and say, okay, well, the preacher X is not here any longer. We don't have to do that work. Well, yeah, you do. You're committed to the community growth.
Yeah. All I would say about that is you want to use wisdom in that. And hopefully that man will have wisdom to hear that. And because you're giving him the benefit of connection and experience and saying, this work was started at this particular time. This is what it is, and this is why it's effective. And encourage him, but realize if you give up that work, you give up say and control over whether that's done or not. It's one of the calculuses that you make in whether to leave or not. But it's going to be certainly helpful for that guy. But you always want to make sure that it's not pushed on him, and hopefully he has the maturity to say, this guy knows because he's been there. But just as a caution, at the end of the day, you give up control over whether he listens to you or not. But that's a great point that may be missed. Yep. Go ahead, Michael.
The last thing that you said, I just had to share this because it happened last night when you talk about don't compare. One of the people came up to me, one of the ladies, that I treasure her honesty because she is really, really honest.
Mm-hmm.
And she always worries about whether I'm offended. I'm like, honey, you gotta know, I'm not as Southern as I was born. I love somebody that is brutally honest with me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
But she said, that we had the preacher that was here before. He had unbelievable lessons. And I was like, okay, I'm getting ready to accept criticism. And she said, but the truth of the matter is he ought to. He was locked up in that office all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I got what she was saying.
Yeah.
He was saying that we've never had anybody that went to ball games of the kids. We haven't had anybody that, and at first I was like, oh, well, fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah.
My lessons are terrible. But her point was there's more to the work than, and it felt really good to hear, you go out and visit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love a good lesson, but we need a working preacher here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and here's where the challenge on that's going to be is to, I don't, and you didn't, but I don't see that where we gain by piling on a criticism like that, but just graciously take that and move on. I always think it's important for us to be careful how we engage and talk about the former preacher, because someday that'll be us. But wow, what an encouragement it was for you. Yeah. Somebody else have a comment? I thought there was. Okay, Jay.
It was something Mike said. I might have misunderstood, but I wanted to ask him. He said something like every preacher isn't for every congregation. Were you talking about like sermons or like personality, or?
No,
I just want
I'm talking about personalities. Yeah, I'm talking about personalities. I'm talking about your ability to communicate for the need of the congregation. We grow, but there's a time period where, and I'm using myself, Jake. If I would have started going to school earlier, I know how farther I would be. Okay, I know my weaknesses and I know my strength. So, but I'm also not going to doubt what God has put in me to be effective in the work that I have. So I need to know within myself. So, case in point, I cook, I do other things, but I make sure, but I'm still required to grow in the grace of God and in the knowledge of God. That's why I'm saying that. But the congregation knows that too. The congregation can see how you interact. It's a difference. So that's what I'm saying. There comes a point in time where you have to accept.
There's a certain chemistry that prayerfully you'll see before you go into that situation. When we were considering leaving Bear Valley, there were two opportunities that we had, two wonderful congregations. But we wound up here because increasingly it seemed to me that I was a better fit here than I would have been there. When I sat down in the interview process, it felt like a corporate shakedown. I mean, not shakedown, but just, the formality, the feel, and these were guys that I was going to have to be. And I've had that happen another time. I wasn't even seriously looking, but I had the men were great until it came time to sit down with the elders to talk about the work. And as soon as we went, they actually had like 2 or 3 steps down into this little pit where the little table was. It was very symbolic. As soon as we made the bottom of those stairs and we sat down in those chairs, their demeanor changed. They went from these really great guys to this employer-employee kind of a mindset. And it was like, and now I know I've known guys at that particular congregation who have gone and done great work, but it would have been a bad fit. It can be urban rural. It can be, and kudos to Mike, and I've had to do the same thing, transcultural. It could be a northern, southern, eastern, western. I mean, not every guy can do that. I've seen a lot of guys, western guys, who just can't, it's a bad fit in the East. And Eastern guys who had a hard time, and all, there are a lot of things that have nothing to do with doctrine that, boy, how much better to find that out before you get there. I've known guys who've said 3 months in, I knew this was a big mistake, but we moved our family all the way here, and that's rough. Yep.
It's actually right on the money with, I had the opportunity at Lawrenceville. I was preaching there. Half the time I was preaching here in Claxton half the time, and both kind of hinted that they wanted me to come there. And it's just, this is a better fit for me. I'm a rural kind of guy. I don't like the city. That's busy, urban.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this works better.
Yeah. Good thought. Jeremiah, you had a comment?
Yeah, brother, I have some, I guess, a personal question for you.
Okay.
Also, looking for some tips. So
Okay.
I know the eldership here is wanting to hire eventually in the future another full-time minister.
Mm-hmm.
And the list that you gave, I think some of it's personal, but also I feel like you're adding the congregation in. I want to ask on a personal level. So minister to minister, how can you be an encouragement to that new preacher coming in? And I guess I'm asking you because I know, say, you and Hiram, you guys had to meet, you guys had to talk and communicate and work a few things out. So what are some tips that you would give for someone coming in?
Well, so first and foremost, the kingdom is what's most important. There is no room for ego, and you've got to look at this as a complete partnership where you and I believe, so I'm 20 years older. I've been here longer, but that you're in our situation. I don't know what yours is going to be. Ours is one of equality, where he's, because he's younger. Sometimes, is he the associate? No, we are co-ministers, and it is, there's complete equity there. And so we approach that work that way, that and you do that knowing it's just inevitable. Some people are going to be drawn to each of you. They're going to be closer. And sometimes it's predictable. Sometimes it's not predictable. That is, it's age. It might be race, but I can give you several examples to where we cross those boundaries. But you come into that saying, we each have strengths and weaknesses, and we're going to leverage those together. And unity will always be the top priority. Unity and truth, but I mean that's not a concern we have. It's so that people see that we enjoy working together and we do work together. And I think that'd be true even if it was a minister who had a different role as you want to build that teamwork. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I guess did you ever like sit down and have a conversation with them? Hey,
Oh yeah,
mindset. What is your mindset, or what do you need help coming in here with? Or
well, each of these situations are going to be different. I flew to Florida, and Kathy and I went down there, and we sat down with he and Brittany, and we just laid out. We had been through strategic planning, and we laid out the vision. I printed up, went to Kinko's or wherever it was, printed up a booklet that I had shown the elders and said, "This is what I'm taking down. This is what we want to accomplish." Equipped was one of those. We didn't call it Equipped, but a workshop. We had some other goals that we haven't yet accomplished. I shared the elders' vision. Went down there and said, here's what we want to do. Here's how I think that we can make this work. For us, it was tailored to the place where we are. It was we're in a city of 80,000, which doesn't sound all that much, but it's an extremely diverse city. We have an international center where people who are seeking asylum from a lot of different war-torn nations come here. So it's a very diverse community. But the elders, you know how it can be this way. You can have diversity around you and not be diverse within. We've always been, it's been integrated for decades. But what do you say without saying it when you have two men in the pulpit? And at the time we had a South Korean college minister. We never pointed that out. But what does it say to people when they come in the door? It doesn't matter. Those kinds of things don't matter. Age, race, it's, the truth, So we dealt with philosophical stuff, and we dealt with what I felt like meaning. But in his case, we kind of already knew what he could bring, and we just talked about how to make the work go forward. Does that help?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Ask if I'm not getting what you're asking.
So what you're saying, one of the big parts is to embrace the vision of the leadership. And the leadership is going to help guide you through the process, Jeremiah. The leadership of the elders, and what they want to accomplish and what you want to accomplish together is going to be the pitch to what you're trying to get accomplished with whomever is coming in. Because you may have one that may be you may have one that's an older minister that has counseling ability. So that's what I think a conversation that I would love to have with my leadership on the vision. And that takes a lot of planning, but that's buy-in, because you don't want to feel uncomfortable because of shared roles. You want mutual respect and love. The book of Thessalonians shows that it's a we thing, it's not a me thing.
Right.
We can really get into that and being unified through the body of Christ.
Well, and we're in that's a completely different area of the preacher and his work. But I think you guys already know I don't care if you're a church of 20 or 800. I'm a firm believer in strategic planning and creating a vision, mission, and objectives and goals. It gives a framework to, as a part of that, you build a bridge from now to then. Who are we now? And give those characteristics. Who are we then? And it was out of that, Jeremiah, that ultimately we got to where we were in this co-ministry thing that we're doing. Is what do we want to be then? What do we want to be, do, look like as a congregation? And that when you brainstorm and you get leadership, and in the place of a men's meeting, do that. Have them all invest in that and say, this is honestly who we are, good and bad, and steer them in whatever direction. If they're negative, try to help them to mind them toward the positive. If they're idealistic, infuse some reality into that, and then say, all right, how do we build the bridge from where we are to where we want to be? That is the plan. Okay. And so Hiram was certainly a big part of that. Okay. All right. Number 4, some miscellaneous thoughts. Leave graciously. Don't leave with a sour grapes attitude. And all of these are kind of related. Leave so you can return. I've known some preachers that can never go back to where they were because they had that bridge burning mentality. Remember, the church is bigger than you are. We're not above having our egos out of check. You may wrestle with guilt if the church struggles or goes backward after you leave. Every church has a number of people who are converted to the preacher and not to Christ. But I believe it was the late Jack Evans that said, if you think that you're irreplaceable, just die. He says, we'll go to your funeral and then we'll eat fried chicken in your honor. And guess what? We'll move on. And I think that's right. None of us is irreplaceable. If the church survived the death of the Apostle Paul and the Apostle Peter, it's going to survive the leaving of us to go to a different place. So let's keep it real. Number 5, how do you resign? This is just a little practical matter. If you have an eldership that's where I would start. I would suggest that you read that letter of resignation to them. Depending on how you approach this, if you are looking at another congregation, you let them know about that tryout. Hopefully, you have a good enough relationship. You're saying, "Look, I'm not discontent here. This opportunity came along, and maybe give your reasons why you're considering that." When you do that, you certainly are living with trust in God, because they may say, "Oh, the charm's broken. You have a wandering eye." It's probably not going to happen that way. If you're doing a good local work, they're going to hope that you go and you want to stay. But let's say you come back. Before you speak to the entire congregation, speak to the leadership. Read that letter of resignation to them. If you've done your job right, it's going to be hard. It's going to be emotionally difficult. And then I think you're going to follow the leadership's guidance. But let's say, assuming that you're leaving that work in a good way, a functional way, I would ask that I be allowed to stand before the congregation and to read a letter of resignation. That way you can directly communicate to people. You can avoid misunderstandings or assumptions. Okay. And you can dispel if people think, "Oh, they're just trying to get rid of the preacher." You can and in the language of that, where possible, speak well of the leadership, speak well of the church, speak optimistically about the future, because you want them, that you love them. You want them to continue to do well after you've left and gone somewhere else. Go ahead, Michael. You're on mute.
That's the best
You're
thing you
mute.
said.
Let's say good gestures, but I don't hear your message. Go ahead.
It's amazing how many times that doesn't happen, and the congregation thinks that the eldership has gotten rid of him. And it happens way too often, when just transparency and honesty and heartfelt honesty and all of that could have solved all those problems. Because I've seen it before, where they thought it's happened to my father. They thought that Dad was run out, but it was simply, we had the same situation that you had. My health, I had asthma as a child, and my health was not good where we were living. And he had to find a way to get out of there. But that congregation rebelled against the eldership because it wasn't handled properly. And I'm kind of throwing my dad under the bus here. I think he did all he could, but it wasn't perceived that way, because there wasn't a unified standing shoulder to shoulder and saying, "We're going to miss him, but this is why." So
communication, man, that's huge. And I guess there's also, and that what you're saying is some years ago, if you were, a child, I want you to think about culture now.
Yeah. 40 years ago.
When a church decides to make a change, which they are completely within their right to do, even if it's not for doctrinal reasons, if they had the right to hire you, they have the right to fire you, or to ask you to resign, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to classify that. And the preacher plays a huge role. Do not contribute to division. But that gracious leaving, that communication is huge, because our culture distrusts authority. And even under the best of circumstances, you're going to have members who don't like or agree with that change, or that especially if it's not your choice and the congregation is ending your work for you, and they're going to pitch a fit. In your job while you're there, even if it hurts, is to talk them off the ledge and to back them away from rebellion, because this is the bride of Christ, and you don't want any part. You don't want that on your hands. And so you're going to remind them of the bigger picture, and know that God's going to take care of you. If it's your fear about that, or if it's your ego is bruised or you're hurt, realize that the God who has walked with you all this way will continue. Yeah. Good thoughts. All right. Any other comments or? Yep. Go ahead, Mike.
That is part of us learning the congregation A lot of them already have bad experiences with that situation. And my belief is, if you are in a work, you want to leave that work better than what you got it.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there are too many situations where the tragedy comes before a preacher comes, and you deal with the first 2 or 3 years of cleanup. Okay.
For sure.
And then getting everybody to go to work and getting everybody on focus and on track. And then for younger preachers that may not have the opportunity, their opportunities may come up. That's a fear for most congregations, but that's a part of that connectivity. They don't want to get so close that they think you got your eyes somewhere else. And so they're a little apprehensive, but as time goes on, that eases. But we have to be, I think we have to, be of that nursing type attitude to carry the congregation forward and developing them to continue to serve the Lord.
That's right. At its best, it's going to be hard when you leave one place and go to the other. When there's no, and I would say you leave when things are going well. I mean, it said, when do you leave a congregation? You don't leave a congregation when you're in the middle of a crisis. If you care about the good, the nature of the kingdom and the success of the kingdom, you don't bail on them. It could be that you get to a point where you say, well, I think I have done as much as I can. And that's a judgment call. But far better if you can leave when you're on an upswing, when there's a lot going on and there's good, and then do all you can to nurture that as you go somewhere else. But at its best, it's always hard to leave a work and go somewhere else. So you want to do all you can to make that the best it can be. All right. I see 13 minutes here. I want to give you a little unit that just a little practical thing. Won't take a lot of time because you guys are already doing this. These are some things I've learned even in preaching for several years. And just call this baptisms. This is like a little one-off. I don't know where you would put this in a tab in your notebooks. But let me just give you a few things. Number one, handling public responses for baptism. I don't know what you guys do during the invitation song, and I realize that this is a very personal, individual thing. But when you are standing there during the invitation song, I assume, do all you guys stand up front during the invitation? Okay. What do you do with yourself? You can feel very uncomfortable. I think about you introverts, maybe that's harder. But I suggest that you gently look across the however big your auditorium is, but across the membership of the folks who are out there. If there's someone who seems to have been particularly moved, even disturbed by the lesson, don't do it mercilessly, but focus your gaze on them. I believe you kind of keep a softness to your eyes. Don't seem like you're angry or hateful. More to convey an ethos that you care and that you're expectant, and that I don't care if it's a church of 10. Those are the folks you're preaching to, and you're hoping that if there's a need for somebody to handle something publicly, that they'll do so. When they start coming down front, and you see that, again, a lot of this is First Pollard chapter 4. Okay, so I understand there's not necessarily a BCV on this, but I think it just conveys something when you start going toward them. When they come up front and you go, what does that say? It's like, I know this is hard for you, but let me meet you halfway. Now I do think that's the prodigal son's father. When he saw him afar off, what did he do? He runs and he embraces him. And the older I get, the more inclined I am to be a bit more demonstrative. My first 15 or 20 years, at least 10, 15 years, I wasn't as much of a hugger. That's just a change in me and the different things that have happened. But that means a lot to them, because this was one of the hardest things they've ever do to come forward. Take their response and reassure them. Watch your face. If you're like me, I can be in the default kind of a serious look. Be pleasant. That's going to help. When you're taking their confession, watch your posture. Let's say they come forward to be baptized. Put an arm on their shoulder and be warm. This is a good thing. This is a wonderful thing. You're setting the tone for how everybody else in the auditorium and the one responding reacts to this. And here's the thing: there may be somebody else on the pew who's contemplating the same thing. And when they see, now, if you can create this environment where you have folks come forward and to sit with them and encourage them, here's this person who needs to make a change, and they say, "Wow, this is what happens when I come forward." You can be a big part of creating that culture. All right. Okay. Number 2. Just a practical thing. I don't know about your baptistries. We just in the new building, we've done something that I've seen elsewhere, where you can stand behind and you have the person come down into the baptistry. That changes things. For most of my preaching life, it's been the deal of going down into the water and baptizing them in the pool with the person that comes in there. That's typically still the way it's done. By the way, I got away from waiters a few years ago, and when they were changing into their gospel advocate little blue gown, I would put one on too, because I was tired of having my suit on and I don't care what I did to cinch those waiters, I always got water in there. So to me, it was easier. Just change into the gospel advocate gown with them and just get wet, and it's easier. You don't have to worry about, like, if you want to give them a hug before they leave the baptistry, it's a little easier. But what you always want to do is be mindful of, on occasion, especially with older, infirm people, safety. But with women, modesty. Guys, if they're anywhere within 40 years of, well, I should say that, 20, 30 years of my age, and it's a woman, as soon as they come up out of the water, and I'll make sure I encourage them toward the steps, but I look away and go the other way. Okay, I want to ensure the modesty of that lady. You guys probably have no issues. Don't need me to tell you how to baptize somebody. You probably have no issues with that whatsoever. But this is what happens after that. Maybe having talk to them after the baptism and reassure them about what they've done. Maybe you ask them to write a note to themselves afterward, especially if it's anybody, I'd say under 20, so that they don't, second guess what they did. They can read their own words and what they thought, what they felt, why they did this. Y'all are familiar with the Open Bible Study, Ivan Stewart. You may even use that. I still favor it. It's not what I use exclusively, but I do like the idea of the welcome circle. It has been always been a well-received practice where you get the folks that are present and you're in a welcome circle. Maybe you sing a song with them, you say some words of encouragement, you pray with them. It just lets them know this is not some awkward pat on the back and handshake and out the door they go. That this is important. It means something. I think, here's something I want to just give you real quick. What can you teach new converts? What's something you can say to them? Here's something I've often said to someone after they obey the gospel. As a way of encouragement, tell them, say something to God every day. That's prayer. Do something for God every day. That's service. Let God do something for you every day. Let's forgive your sins. And let God say something to you every day. That's Bible study. Say something to God every day. You might see this again somewhere, by the way. Prayer. Do something for God every day. Service. Let God do something for you every day. Forgive your sins. And let God say something to you every day. Bible study. All right. More I could say about that. Just this says a lot about our expectations. Have you ever seen a baptismal preparation room that was basically a storage closet that looked like it got no attention? We had a lady in Colorado who took it on herself to make it a more inviting environment. And so she was a wealthy lady. So so I appreciated that, but she didn't spend a lot of money, I don't think, but bought a little table in there with drawers on it, just a little tablecloth and some fake flowers and just kind of put a little rug down. Just she transformed that little space, and we got all the junk out of there. Made sure that wasn't the catch-all. And I just think that's a little thing, and it can make a big difference. It says to the church, we expect to use this baptistry. I mean, I won't tell you where. I went and I preached, and a young man who had been at camp with us, upper teenager, decided to be baptized, and I was preaching in his home congregation the next Sunday, and we went into the baptistry, and there was like this much water, and it was filled with bugs and junk and debris, and I wondered how long had it been since that baptistry had been put to use. And fixing the baptismal preparation room is just a little thing, but it's a part of a bigger thing. Jake, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to say that ours is smaller than Harry Potter's little corridor under the stairs. It's small. It's like it's as tall as like my chest, so I can't fit in there. I am 6'2", but I can't spread this. Oh yeah, we got to make a new room.
Yeah, I think that'll be a priority. By the way, Harry Potter goes to church with us. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, really?
Not the Harry Potter, I guess, but a Harry Potter.
Hey.
Yeah. Fun fact for you. All right, that one was free. Any other thoughts or comments? I'm done with that. I just wanted to give you these. We're down. Our quarter is getting away from us quickly, so we're down to little hits, drive-bys that I'm going to hit you with before now and the time we end. I'm in a gospel meeting next week, but it's 2 hours away, about 100 miles. I'm going to be driving back and forth, so I'll be right here next Tuesday teaching like normal. So it should not disrupt anything. And then Thursday the meeting will be over, so I'll be back here. We've got 3 teaching periods left and miles to go before we sleep. I got one of your projects in. You guys feel good about where you're going with that? Your wedding sermons, funeral sermons. Keep at work on that. Big part of your grade. On that Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, we'll also take a few minutes at the end of class to give you the study guide for your final. And you know now how the open book goes. You'll have a good feel for how that's going. The second part will be just like the first part. Questions, thoughts, comments? All right. Well, let's bow for prayer. Father, thank you for the great comments that these men have made in class today. Thank you, Father, for the wisdom of your word that can help us in the practical matters of life. God, we want to be kingdom men who care about and work toward the growth and the strengthening of the body of your Son. Help us to love him so much that we do all that we can to act in ways that promote his work on this earth, wherever we are. Help us, Father, in our love for you, to be faithful in our service. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Hope you get to feeling better.
Thank you. Well, just teaching this class a little better, so thanks. Y'all preach the word this weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Neil.